the onslaught of authoritarian governments, and that led to a kind of island mentality that Islamists still retain. They lack, however, a clear vision for how to run a modern economy and a modern society and provide all the services and development that comes with that. Unlike that kind of illusion of a secret plan that's pulling all the strings from behind, you see even those players, and particularly the United States, don't have a clear idea about how to lead this transition. We will see this period of, if you like, disarray and an inability of Islamist parties to actually lead Egypt into a different kind of future. And that's a challenge for liberals and leftists to come up with a different answer, if you like, for a new project, a new relationship with modernity that's not built on the same basis of the authoritarian one that we inherited in the post-colonial era, but one that listens to the people. Throughout Egypt's modern existence, people were always discussed as a problem. So you talk about population issues in Egypt as if it's always a problem, and what's really needed is a shift in mentality to think of Egypt's people as its greatest resource. And you see them contributing to the building of economies all across the Middle East and even in Europe. And that's the kind of mentality shift that you need, that using those people as Egypt's greatest resource, and Egypt can go on to become one of the very successful economies in the world.
Just want to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Voice of Russia with me, Scott Craig, and today I'm discussing the situation in Egypt 1 year after the fall of Mubarak with my guests Carl Shara, Nabila Ramdani, Oliver Pierce and Nawal El-Saadawi. Oliver Pierce, just a little bit more on the aid and development situation on the ground. Are you noticing any significant changes in the work that you've been doing?
Yes, we have noticed changes in the last year or so. I mentioned earlier the fact that unemployment has risen and that economic disparities are perhaps growing. At the same time, for some of our partners that Christian Aid has been supporting for many decades now in Egypt, there are perhaps new possibilities. So, for instance, we're supporting a local organisation in Minya Governorate, which has been working with quarry workers in that area for many years, and following the changes in the legal system, it's now easier for that partner of Christian Aid to support the local quarry workers to establish an independent trade union. And as a result of that, they are able to negotiate more freely with their employers, the quarry owners, and also with the local governor. That's not to say that there are still massive challenges that they, as informal labourers, face, and that millions of other Egyptians face, whether in work or whether trying to get a job. But there are changes that we have seen, that we are confident that those partners that we've been working with for a long time, that have been able to mobilise workers to use a rights-based approach in their work, to embed the ideas that people have rights to claim, that they are working as humans to contribute to the economy and to their own families and more broadly to society. By using that approach and by demonstrating that enabling people to make the most of themselves in their work is going to contribute more widely, is starting to show fruit, and that more marginalised groups are able to contribute.
Is there any evidence on the ground that your work is somewhat more difficult now that a more pro-Islamist movement appears to be coming to power in Egypt?
I think one of the things that we're conscious of working with our partners in Egypt is those that are more Christian organisations, maybe rooted in a church history organisationally, are perhaps even more uncertain about what the future may hold at a macro level, if you like, what the new political situation means for them in terms of registration, in terms of working with government institutions to make sure that they're able to carry on the programmatic and the other work that they do. More widely than that, we're concerned that there may be developments which are going to make it harder for organisations that want to support local groups in Egypt, such as Christian Aid. It's going to be harder for us to ensure that we're able to cooperate with those local organisations, whether it's through funding or whether it's through other kind of cooperation and support.
Nawal El-Saadawi, in your view, is there an opportunity to improve the status of women in Egypt now?
No, not at all. And the situation in Egypt under Mubarak and Sadat was not good. Though they said that Suzanne Mubarak and Jihan, they did some improvements to the laws, family code, etc. But generally, because women in Egypt, we do not have power. We try to organize women, because without power, we cannot have anything. So we try to establish the Egyptian Women Union. Since Sadat and Mubarak and the government intervened and banned our associations. So they want women to be individuals, to participate in the revolution as just individuals, but not as a party, as a political party. So I don't expect, and especially under the Muslim Brothers and the other most reactionary Salafiyya groups, women, we will lose powers unless we are now re-establishing the Egyptian Women Union to gain power, to unite women, etc. And we have many, many young revolutionary men with us in the Egyptian Women Union. And that's a good development.
You mentioned the Mubarak trial has the potential to bring together people in the country, or is it really just running the risk of descending into a Saddam Hussein-style farce, in essence?
No. I think the trial, everybody knows that it's fake. It's a play. It's just a play. We know that. Either there will be a real trial, and they will be really punished for killing thousands of young people.
Just to pick up on that, do you mean that the trial is not being conducted properly, or you mean that there is some kind of ulterior motive to the trial?
There is no justice. The law itself, a very clever lawyer can play with the law. A criminal can be innocent, and then innocent can be a criminal. This is the nature of the law under a very unjust system. And there is a revolution. So Mubarak should have been in front of a revolutionary court, not an ordinary court with an ordinary law that clever lawyers can find gaps.
Nabila Ramdani, let me come to you. Is there a danger that the new protests that we've seen, the protesters in Tahrir Square now, is there a danger that perhaps they're at risk of being sort of marginalised in terms of where the political dialogue is going now?
I think, if anything, demonstrations are going to be more forceful in the future, because it's all about the economy. And the economy is very much in tatters. It was destroyed. It was a destroyed economy anyway, before Mubarak was overthrown. But because it was held up by tourism and by crony capitalism of Mubarak. And this is going to be the major issue in the years to come. In Egyptian Arabic, you have the same word to say life and bread, aish. And that's very much what it's all about. It's about people, having being able to lead a decent life and make, a decent earning. And that's, the very fact that the Egyptians are using the same word for these two things shows how bread, which is a vital resource, is not always guaranteed.
And just lastly, on the Mubarak trial, I mean, is it actually really just kind of a sideshow, or is it something that actually is important in terms of how Egyptians are able to move on?
I think symbolically it's important that justice seems to be done, even though if you talk to any Egyptian, they call it a drama, as a soap opera. They are calling for Mubarak to be killed, in fact, which I think would be a huge mistake. You don't want Mubarak to be killed, you want justice to be done. And as Nawal made it very clear, I think if the corruption charges are pursued in the right way, and if the money is brought back so that Egyptians could use it, that would be a major victory for the Egyptian people.
I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We're out of time. But my thanks today to my guests, Carl Sharo, Nabila Ramdani, Oliver Pierce and Nawal Al-Sadawi. And you're listening to The Voice of Russia. Stay with us.
this transition. We will see this period of, if you like, disarray and an inability of Islamist parties to actually lead Egypt into a different kind of future. And that's a challenge for liberals and leftists to come up with a different development that comes with that. Unlike that kind of illusion of a secret plan that's pulling all the strings from behind, you see even those players, and particularly the United States, don't have a clear idea about how to lead us as a problem. So you talk about population issues in Egypt as if it's always a problem, and what's really needed is a shift in mentality to think of Egypt's people as its greatest resource. And you see them contributing to the building of economies all across the Middle East and the onslaught of authoritarian governments. And that led to a kind of island mentality that Islamists still retain. They lack, however, a clear vision for how to run a modern economy and a modern society and provide all the services and answer, if you like, for a new project, a new relationship with modernity that's not built on the same basis of the authoritarian one that we inherited in the post-colonial era, but one that listens to the people. Throughout Egypt's modern existence, people were always discussing